regardless of how tainted with failure your life or entrepreneurial path is, you're always either failing up or just growing.
Welcome to Emergence Now, the podcast where the boundaries of inner growth and global transformation blur. I'm Dhiren. I'm joined by my co-host, Nikos. We're going to be guiding you through the evolving landscapes of business, technology, and personal development. So we are embarking on season 2. Nikos, season 2.
Season two.
Yeah.
Season two. I'm so excited.
So, I was just, guess who was in town from UOP?
UOP. James Ward.
Close. Pavan Gill was in town,
Okay.
and he's a big fan of the show. So
Nice.
to the point wherein he was calling out episodes, and he was like, "Remember that episode where you guys quoted Rumi? His daughter's name is Rumi." And so that really resonated with him, and he was talking about AI and dial in and your perspective, and you know he said, I listened to every episode, so it was really nice to
Love
hear
it. Love it. Love it.
that he's lapping it up. So shout out to PG.
Awesome. I'm going to hit him up.
Yeah, you should. He wants to do a deep dive on dial in. So today we're delving into this intriguing aspect of the entrepreneurial mindset, right? So that shift from, that relentless drive to a more nuanced approach to life and business. So one thing I've noticed is that, entrepreneurs get to a stage. As a matter of fact, I was just telling you before we hit the record button that, I have people in my circle, in my community, who, you know, tell me stories about how they've lost their mojo, or, Darren, I'm just getting my mojo back, right? So why do entrepreneurs, and driven individuals sometimes get soft? Like, why do we lose our mojo? So we're going to be exploring this. Now, when we say soft, we're not talking about a lack of toughness or grit or resilience, right? Instead, it's about that shift in mindset, a change in how we approach, different challenges and how we interact with the world around us, or it's that feeling that prompts us to share with a friend that, look, I feel like I've just lost my mojo. I don't know what happened, but I don't have the same level of energy, the same level of drive, the same level of focus as I did in the past. And I want to bring that feeling back, right? So why does this happen? Especially to entrepreneurs who are known for their grit and their determination. So it's kind of this curious phenomenon, because I think it happens to to all of us at some point. Some of us are able to recognize it, while others, they may not call it mojo, but something's missing, something's lacking, something is shifted, right?
What's interesting is you separated the mental toughness and the vision of the archetypal entrepreneur of running through walls and overcoming obstacles with a change in mindset, which I interpret also as maybe not being as engaged in what you're doing as you have before, right? Because they're related. Mental toughness, and I can also set something up, in terms of the masculine and feminine energies around this, because that's also part of it. We, as entrepreneurs, especially in the Western world, it's very masculine oriented, right? It's all very external, and you need to dominate, you need to land grab, you need to gain territory, you need to go out, 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 out. versus it from Eastern philosophy, it's more about surrender, like we've talked about before. It's being still. It's more about love and joy than it is about a force of nature. And that's the distinction between power and force. And the one thing that I would like to set up the framework for is this notion of the masculine energy tends to enjoy the effort. So and I'm hearing this from guys that are taking like TRT. So there's a biohacking element to this too, right? With like the Joe Rogans, and now Bezos is doing TRT, just like looking at how big he is. And the guys that are pumping themselves with more hormone, they enjoy working out more. They like that feeling of kind of grit and effort, and there's something associated with that that's related to the dopamine spike in your brain versus kind of just being calm and still, which is almost the opposite of that. So just kind of want to set up the spectrum as a theme, and then now we can kind of like look in between in terms of how a person might start to have that internal fluency in terms of what they're gaining in terms of power or what they're losing in terms of mojo.
Mm, yeah. So give us the 101 on TRT.
So, testosterone replacement therapy, it's basically going into a doctor, a somebody that specializes in hormone replacement, and it's usually done by people that are post 40. You go in and you do a check, you do a legit blood test to look at your testosterone levels, and in particular your free testosterone levels, right? Because anything in your day could really affect or impact your levels of testosterone, whether that's what you eat, whether or not the foods that you eat are causing inflammation, or whether or not you're getting enough sleep or exercise, and all of those things. And so they actually check your hormone levels, and based on certain benchmarks due to your age or your physical activity, the doctor would recommend giving you testosterone shots. So you'll essentially get like a form of a moderate steroid, but it's not what the bodybuilders are taking. They're pumping themselves and getting their hormone levels up to like 2,000, 3,000, which is just insane. This is just getting back up to normal levels where you start feeling normal again, getting enough sleep, and getting feeling strong again. And so it's just become very popular for folks as a biohacking tool.
Funny you mentioned that because Pavan actually mentioned uh, some of the different, biohacking uh, techniques and hacks that we've discussed on this show, and something that he wanted to explore further. So it got me thinking about, you know, is there an age where you've looked into this, is there a specific phase in life where we need to start exploring these different, you know um, what do I call it? Do I call it a hack, or is it a replacement? Is it a supplement? What is it exactly? And at what point do we start exploring? Do we do it when we're starting to feel that dip, or should we anticipate that and start exploring it before that dip even happens?
It's an awareness issue, right? So this goes right into the theme of exploring your energy levels and being dialed into that. When I went in, ironically, when I went into the to see this doctor, this was only about 12 months ago, not even. I felt a lack of energy in general, and I felt kind of stressed, and I feel like I just wasn't up to my normal capacity, feeling, output. Nikos at an 8 or a 9. I was feeling more like a Nikos at a 6, and I wasn't attuned to what was causing it. So I went into the TRT doctor, and he said strangely that he couldn't put me on TRT because my hormonal levels, my test levels were actually way above average, and
Hmm.
so it would just cause a disruption in what I was doing.
And you did a
And
blood test for that,
I
obviously.
did a blood test for that. Yeah. So I and he was just asking me like what I was doing. I said nothing out of the norm. I was normal supplementation, and I was thankful for that, right? So it was more mental than anything else. It wasn't actually hormonal. And you know, the thing that you think is the symptom isn't really the cause. And so that was the lesson to be learned there. But I had an awareness for it, right? And so and this is, you know, long story short, this triages into my mental burnout, which was, you know, the episode that I had come end of November when I was just like losing my ish and not feeling, you know, up to snuff with what I needed to be doing with dial in. And I was burning the candle at both ends, three ends really, and really just needed to become more essential and eliminate certain things in my life so that I could create more space. And then, you know, like I said, now I'm happier than ever. I'm in flow most of the time. I'm Nikos at, you know, averaging at a 7 at minimum. And so you need to really be aware of the internal fluency. Yes, you can go to the doctor, but also just start with the awareness and then start being attuned to the type of feeling that you're getting. Is it more mental, or is it really, really impacting you in a physical way? And I think those psychosomatic aspects start to become a little bit more embedded within us the more you're dialed into it, the more that you're aware of it.
So that's really interesting. Was it more somatic? Was it in the body, or was it more up here? Like, what was going on? I know you mentioned overwhelm, right? There was just a
Mhm.
lot going on. You were burning the candle on three ends, right?
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure how that's possible, but I guess on both ends and then in the middle, I guess that is how you're burning it on three ends, which
Yeah.
I think entrepreneurs listening to this can definitely relate, right? But
Totally.
was there a
Yeah.
lack of excitement or energy? You said energy. There was a lack of
Mm.
energy, but was it physical energy or was it mental energy? Like
I
was there a
I
tug between the body wanting to do more but mentally you were just spent, or was it the other way
Yes.
around? Or
That's
both?
exactly it. Yes, that's exactly it. There were points where the mental energy, I was just zapped. I would feel brain fog and I just wouldn't be as engaged. But typical entrepreneur, let's try to supersede it with more willpower, right?
Mm.
And so trying to drive force into it, but I was still working out 3 to 5 times a week. So there was definitely a separation between the physical and the mental, but the I'd say that the mental affected the physical to the point where I would just be up at 4 o'clock in the morning and it would just zap me for the day. And the cognitive blow was very significant, even though I would push through and still do like a 90-minute workout that day, but only got like 5 hours sleep. Like why? Why? Just ego. That is just pure ego, right? Just let it go. And
Yeah,
so you start it's not a clear break, right? Because the mind is the body is the soul and it's completely intertwined, so you can't really separate the two, and the two start to affect one another. But at the very least you can start to attain the internal fluency to know where that's coming from. Is it here? Is it up here? And then is it are you feeling enervated, you know, lack of energy? And it starts to impact one another, but you have to understand where those sources are coming from. And then in the advanced use cases you can actually put those energy you could put the physical symptoms in certain places in your body. You could melt them away, you can help them dissipate, things like that, all with a strong meditation practice. But you're absolutely right, it's convoluted, it's not crystal clear, but at least you could take the first steps in having that internal fluency to understand where that feeling is coming from.
yeah. It's awareness, right? So it's so funny that you bring this up because just today I was having my weekly catch up or level set with my coach, and and we were looking at this particular run that I did over the weekend on Saturday specifically, and it was supposed to be a 2 hour run, which ended up becoming a 1 hour 45 minute run. And there were a lot of stops and starts and stops and starts. So he asked me, he said, "What happened?" And I told him, I said, "You know what? I woke up and I just did not want to do it. I just did not want to do that session. I didn't want to do any session. And for me to say I don't want to do, like, I can say I don't want to do a swim or get on a bike. Like, that's within the realm, right? But for me to say I don't want to do a run, which is my jam, it's my happy place, it's meditation, it's release for me, means something's definitely off. And he picked up
Something's up.
on it.
Yeah.
But what I did was I forced the outcome because, I didn't want to get soft. Like, okay, you know what, Darren, this is all you have. This is the hardest thing you're going to do today. You have to complete it. But I didn't even do justice to it, right? So he revealed to me that, you know what, in that situation, you actually ended up doing more harm than good. Yeah, you pushed through, you forced outcome, but you didn't really listen to what your body was saying. Your body wasn't saying this is going to be difficult. Your body was saying, I don't want to do this today. And you didn't give it, the recognition. You didn't honor it. You didn't honor how you were feeling, right?
Yeah.
And uh, and 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 that was such a, and my challenge there was, well, it's a slippery, this is now the mind, right? It plays tricks, right? That's why I say you can't really trust your own mind, because my mind was, well, you know what, if you don't do it, you're gonna regret it, and you're gonna feel guilty, for the rest of the day. So power through it. But then what did I really gain, right? uh, I didn't really gain anything. He said, next time, instead of doing a 1 hour 45, go and just go for a walk. You don't have to force the outcome. And I think that's the trap that not just endurance athletes, because there's a lot of intersection between, there's between endurance athletes and entrepreneurs, right? So this is such a curious phenomenon, right? That I think we all go through. We often start our journey, right? For me right now, my journey, my North Star is this big race. My A race for the year is Ironman Austria, right? And I've got this excitement, but I can't sustain that level of excitement at such a high level, right? It's not about coming and being excited every single day. It's about, you know, being consistent, right? Like what in Buddhism, there's this saying, after before enlightenment, chop wood, fetch water. After enlightenment, chop wood, fetch water. Like, you've just got to be consistent and just do the work. And uh, and and so what's interesting about the journey of the entrepreneur is we start out with a burst of excitement. There's an unstoppable enthusiasm for, that vision, but over time this excitement starts waning, right? And that's what we want to explore. Why does that happen, right? Sometimes it's somatic, sometimes it's mental, but it's that level of awareness, um, between the two.
There's so much there. There's so much there at multiple levels, right? Because the mind gets attached to external ideas of what you think you want, and you stop listening to pure intuition, which I feel like most people in society don't really have that going on unless they have a strong spiritual or meditative practice. And this is not to cast judgment on the people that don't pray or have a spiritual life or do anything like that. It's just, it's pure awareness, right? It's like there are things that are not explained by the physical world or Newtonian physics, things that you just can't prove. And now we're getting into, Joe D stuff, right? In terms of like frequencies, because this has everything to do with frequency. And when you are at your highest passion, highest availability with that frequency, you're dialed into a 700, 800 frequency where it's just joy and
Mm.
love and passion. But you can't be at an 800 all the time unless you're a Buddha or a Jesus, right? Where you're just radiating and you can just walk into a room and somebody just feels that vibration from you, right? Which I 100% believe is real. In the entrepreneurial realm, it's taken by force. It's, let's get this done. It's a bunch of tasks, and we are going to will our way in and force our way into it, which again, the entire Western civilization has been built upon taking and power and colonialization and all of those things. And not to say that those things are not valuable. I feel like there's a shift coming, and the shift is coming and moving toward more of, the softer foundations, where going soft is not a bad thing. And it's easy to taint that as a bad thing. Oh, you're going soft, right? Yeah, you're going soft. You're not hard anymore. Yeah, it's just like, come on. Those days are kind of coming to an end, and we're seeing it's unraveling. So I guess what I'm observing, and what I'd like our listeners to be attuned to, is that there's multiple levels of where that passion and purpose is coming from. At the day-to-day level, do you just go with the flow with absolutely everything? No, you have to challenge yourself. Obviously, you have to do your homework. You got to get stuff done, and you
Yeah.
have to maintain those tasks. But there's also a mode of surrender that's going with the flow of what your body is telling you. And when there's a misalignment between your mind and what's going on more over here, like more of your heart chakra, and whether it's like a positive, joyful, like, emotion versus it's I'm feeling kind of this like ickiness here. There's like a tension. Something's not up. And it's usually because the mind and the heart are not coinciding. And so just being aware of that is really the first step to that internal awareness that we're talking about.
Yeah. Since you spoke about Dr. Joe D, one of my favorite meditations of his of all time. I mean, it's my go-to. Last week I was delivering a workshop, and before delivering the workshop, every single day I did the blessing of the energy center. So you're talking about the chakras, right?
Mm.
It's actually going through the chakras and blessing each one. It's such a beautiful meditation. As a matter of fact, we'll put it on the show notes
Love it.
for people to be able to pick it up from his online store. It's such a beautiful meditation, just blessing each energy center, and you just feel this natural expansion after that 45 minutes. The ROI, since we're speaking to entrepreneurs and the like, the ROI is it can't be quantified. Absolutely cannot be quantified because it just takes that level of awareness, right? And it
Yeah.
grounds you.
I love that you
So
said ROI, because right before this you were talking about outcomes on your run. Is it you your mind was trying to get to the outcome, whereas your body was saying we're not in flow right now? And the fact that you kind of just dialed that in a little bit and said, okay, I want to be a little bit more in flow, and now you're aware of that, right? And usually that higher frequency and that vibration comes from not being attached to the outcome, which is the ironic part about being an entrepreneur, which is like entrepreneurs are just only about outcomes, KPIs, metrics, which is a whole other side of the issue. Is that I feel like the angel community in Silicon Valley, where we both come from, has completely almost erased or minimized the propensity for astute innovation, highly ambitious innovation, because of how they're measuring each and every company based on metrics, early traction, found it. Like there's just, the rubric is like so tight
yeah,
now that it eliminates like any X factor to take place, because of the, okay, well, they're spreading their seed across 100 different companies. One of these has to win, and they feel like they could dial into that scientifically, that they've absolutely removed any X factor to be ambitious or to do a true moonshot, right?
yeah, yeah. I have a question for you. So when you think about entrepreneurs that are going soft, right, or that have lost that drive, that momentum, that focus, your journey is quite clear. But broadly speaking, would you say it's a result of overwhelm? Do you think there's so much coming at them that that they're being pushed back, which then you know has this adverse effect of of slowing down?
That one is super interesting because we've talked about this before. Entrepreneurs are cut from a different cloth because they've already opted out of the 9 to 5 matrix. And by virtue of opting out of the 9 to 5 matrix, you're starting with your highest passion. Like, you're going into it with, I am so, I am so ready to conquer the world because I love this thing I'm doing day to day, that I don't mind working 15-hour days for weeks on end, weekends, to the fact that it's destroying my social life, maybe even my family life. So that's enough to sustain you energetically for a really, really long time. But yes,
Never
100%.
looked at it that
The
way.
Yeah, but the obstacles, yes, they get incredibly overwhelming. and and I'd say most entrepreneurs are not incredibly aware of, where their heart is expanding, or maybe growing them in a direction. Because what happens at the very end of that, it's like, yes, you accomplish all of these different things, but at the end of that, you grow, you learn, and you can do anything after that, right? But at the same time, if you're just if you're just constantly dealing with all of these different things, you get burnout in the same way, or you don't anticipate all of the challenges that you have, that you either need to tap out, shift gears, change your mindset, or let somebody else more willing for the task start to take over. And I'm sure the examples that you're thinking of as well are the entrepreneurs that have said, well, man, I've been doing this for like 7-8 years, it's been great, it's been a fun ride, but it's different. I mean, even the Beatles needed to break up, right? So it's a shift in your own inner growth. So that goes
Yeah.
100% back to inner game and inner growth. You've changed as a person. This isn't somebody that's only been doing this 2-3 years out the gate. This is, probably people that have already been getting knocked in the teeth every day for like almost a decade. And it does take a decade to build something great, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that really resonates with me when I think about entrepreneurs that have lost their mojo or that have lost momentum or are going soft, as you said. Uh, there are two types. So there are ones that there are those that are overwhelmed, by the thought that by the growing number of things that they need to get done. But it's not because they have all this that they need to get done. It's because they're not prioritizing, right? The priorities are not really clear. Because, taking it back to me, as soon as I prioritize, I start building that forward momentum. It's the release valve on the pressure of overwhelm. Like, I'm now starting to move forward again. That's the first type. The second type, to your point about, after 7 years, you know the Beatles had to break up. I think because those entrepreneurs have changed, right? In the journey, something has shifted, their priorities have changed, and now they're just not as excited about what they're working on. So I think both types of um, you know, both paths actually reveal to us something that, there's a message that is wrapped in that loss of vitality, of focus or energy, or a dip in that drive. It's either, priorities are not straight, right? And there's just so much and we don't even know where to start, or it's the fact that, you've changed, and it's okay. Like, going back to, on Saturday, I changed. I was a different human being when I woke up that morning. I just did not want to do what I was supposed to do, and that's okay, right? um, and to your point about, you know this powerful force, or this realization that we've changed, or that it's signaling to us that we need to we need to be aware of how we're feeling or what we're thinking in that moment. That softening, if we can call it that, can actually lead to a more compassionate entrepreneur, a more compassionate leader, right? Because now you're more thoughtful about the decision making, right? And you're starting to move toward a more, if we can call it a balanced life, right?
Yeah, 100%. I feel that we tend to really just take a look at certain things like the loss of momentum or energy, or the lack of effort, as kind of, not so good things, when really all of those things are internal biomarkers and physiological factors and even psychological factors that weigh in on your certain part of the journey, where it's neither good nor bad. It's just a process of change that you're going through. And really that's the ultimate marker for your own personal journey. And we've said this a bunch of times. It's regardless of how tainted with failure your life or entrepreneurial path is, you're always either failing up or just growing as a result of
Mm,
it. And the growth that you receive from the expansion of where you are today, and then planting a seed and creating space for who you can be tomorrow, is really the key to all of that. Because sky's the limit. It's not just week to week progress. It's like you really need to envision yourself as this new being. What And we live in a world in which everything is about to change, right? With AI, longevity science, DNA, everything is now understood to be information. And at the molecular, at the biochemical level, you can start to change things in the physical world based on how you are programming yourself and programming your own reality. So you might as well shoot for the skies, because everything that you can quite literally manifest or program, it can become real. So it becomes, again, another mental exercise, but it's also very much a spiritual exercise at the same time.
yeah. Yeah, you were talking about, yeah, very well said. I want to just circle back to something you said about social commitments. Uh, have you noticed how some people seem to be in this perpetual state of social engagement? Coffee
Yes.
meetings, network events, endless
Yeah.
social media interactions. Like
Yes.
it's this continuous stream, right? It's just never ending.
Yeah.
And that comes at a cost, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
if I tie this to, that loss of mojo, that drive, the energy levels, of course that's going to happen, right? If you're in this constant state of social engagement, because you're constantly on, right? Always in the mode of socializing, right? And for starters, like it fragments our attention, right? And the human brain isn't it's not wired to multitask effectively, right? It's constantly switching gears, right? Which
Yeah.
can lead to, a drop in productivity, in energy levels, in that drive, and potential. It can potentially lead to burnout, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That one's super interesting, because that is attributed to personality type at the same time, right? I'm in Chicago, and we're right in the middle of winter, and it's around the time where people start to get the seasonal depression, because it's so cold outside and people just want summer to hit. And we're less than 100 days away from summer fully hitting, and then the city goes
You're
wild.
counting down. You guys actually,
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
that a
it's a
thing?
thing.
There's
It's
100
a thing.
days to the
The,
summer.
it's a thing because we have exceptionally long winters. And when
Yeah.
you're in the cold and you're hibernating for 5 months at a time, it affects people's physiology, it affects their energy levels, it affects their momentum. But
Mm.
when I moved here from the Bay Area, where everything in the Bay Area, obviously, the weather in San Francisco, it's on the cold side of 40s to 60s any given day, unless you're in the North Bay or deep in the South Bay, or you go inland a little bit. So it's pretty much status quo every single day, and there's no change. But when I moved to Chicago, there was something about the weather externally that was reflective of my own internal affinities, where I realized, okay, I'm a little bit more, how should you say? chaotic. My poles are a little bit more on opposite ends of the spectrum internally, and the external weather was a good indication of that, a nice reflection of it. So in the summers, yes, I had fun and did all of those things and went to music festivals and was out five days or 5 nights out of the week and took full advantage doing the pools and stuff. But then in the winter, hibernation mode, I was like my most productive. So fire
Mm,
on,
nice.
completely in flow, writing output, just like meditation, reading. Like for some reason, there was something that really resonated with me, and it was cold and bleak outside, but I didn't mind taking walks out in the cold. And there was something about the bleakness, the darkness of it, that it's like without this, you can't have the vibrancy of the summers, right? And it's just understanding that it's both that I was
Yeah.
able to really dial into that internally, which is why I haven't moved. It's been like a decade, and I will find myself in the back in the Bay Area eventually with family. But I found that interesting, just with respect to kind of the knobs and levers of understanding your own productivity, but having the awareness for also understanding kind of your capacity and your mental states at the same time.
But people listening to this show are probably thinking, okay, Nikos, that sounds great.
Yeah,
But what kind of social outlet did you have during that time? Like,
yeah.
how did you meet that need? Or did you not have the need to connect?
But I wasn't, I took a break from being an entrepreneur, right? So I went back into corporate mode because I loved my job and I was doing, I went from big job to big job in tech, and this was the ride that was the rocket fuel unicorn ride, right? Post IPO, multiple acquisitions later, rode that wave. I ended up running the R&D lab. They made me chief AI evangelist, and so it was a fun ride. But I wasn't an entrepreneur. It was just I'm kind of riding this wave and taking it, and I had plenty of social activity. And it wasn't until Rocket Fuel got broken up in parts. There was a Chapter 11 dumpster fire when Seismic sold to Amazon, and it was the Icarus rocket fell, right, and that's when I had to kind of get back into it and be an entrepreneur again. And so that's different than um and then I moved to basically having zero social life. And so now I spent years kind of incubating. So again, it's understanding kind of the knobs and levers of and the ebbs and flows of that journey. And so now that I've been in kind of hibernation, we've been incubating, dial in. It's like, okay, the seed's ready to pop. It's time to go out again. So just again being aware of those things, but I did have to make those sacrifices. I had
Mm.
a great amount of fun for a long time, but yeah, now Jordan would say, okay, yeah, you're not social at all right now. It's just like I'm just working 24/7 and I have zero social life. Um,
Mm.
but that's a thing in its own, and I'm
It's a
fine
choice.
with it.
You're
Yeah,
making a choice.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah, you're making a choice. Um, in Dubai, the the social scene is another level. I mean, I was
it's
going to say
packed.
next level, but it's not even next level. It's the level after the next level, or it's
Yeah,
multiple levels after the next level. I mean,
right.
it's insane. I mean, you know, I get it. The world is increasingly connected, right? And socializing has taken this new dimension, especially after coming out of the pandemic. And I get it. Networking and social interactions are crucial, especially in the business world, right? But there's a thin line between productive socializing and getting caught in this whirlwind of distractions
Yeah,
where we're doing it for the sake of doing it,
totally.
right?
Yeah.
And I just noticed so many people, including myself, where I'm just caught in this perpetual state of social engagement, right?
Hmm.
It's just never ending. And that endless spin of socializing, like I said, it starts fragmenting our brain, right?
Hmm.
And our focus. And it leads to this superficial approach to relationships. and work. And then it becomes, all about breadth and not really about the depth, right?
Yeah.
Spreading
Yeah.
ourselves too thin then can, mean missing out on developing deeper connections and ideas. And then going back to the theme of this pod, which is, losing that level of energy or that drive, right? Just because
Yeah.
there's just so much coming at us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like the people that, and those people are cut from the same cloth too, right? In terms of just pure extroversion, and you enjoy it, like, and you can blend the social networking and, people going out on Tuesdays to do happy hours with their clients and things like that. There's a whole swath and world for that when you're, in the corporate space and you're entertaining people. And then that bleeds into the weekend where now you're having fun with your friends and doing all of that. It's all about balance, right? And are you happy with doing that? I know a lot of people that are just in sales mode all the time, and they're making a really great living by just being a connector and just entertaining people all day long, and they're making a ton of money, and it's totally fine. And again, this is not to cast judgment on those type of people. Everybody is cut from a different kind of cloth, and you can basically customize your life in a way that's most meaningful to you. But I agree, if you're not, you know, focused on either the alignment of your purpose and your passion. For some people, that is your purpose and passion, right? So yeah, it's just so dependent on everyone's individual growth path and what they're attuned to, and that's really what they should be paying attention to and aware of.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's again that awareness, right? That's
Yep.
that awareness. I mean, and I think this dovetails to strategies, right? So
Mhm.
let's talk about strategies, right? So for someone who is, losing their mojo or not having that drive or that push or that decline in energy. Yeah, you mentioned TRT. Do you want to talk about that? Do you want to speak to that, or uh, are you a licensed uh, pharmacist? Can
No, I can't.
can we?
I can't make recommendations. I would 100% seek medical advice from a professional. I can only speak to my own experience and what I've
Yeah.
done to biohack myself. So one of the tools in the toolbox is to go see a hormone therapist to see if you qualify for TRT, or if it makes sense for you. It didn't make sense for me, and all I really needed to do was change up a few things, which is really eliminate big projects in my life that were slowing me down. My mental burnout was a result of me not being aligned to my passion and purpose, and that's
Mm.
been very clear from the very beginning. And I was attuned to that a little bit late, but I knew something was up. So that's very different. The other thing is, instead of chasing down the next supplement or the next big thing, it's to really start to incorporate somatics in your life, which is really, a simple way of looking at somatics is, what is the internal dialogue, or it's starting to develop an internal dialogue with yourself and those energies. And instead of just triaging those energies and saying this is good or bad, starting to classify them in different ways. Like you had said, where is this coming from? Does it feel like a cognitive load that's a little bit heavy? Is it more the heart chakra? Is it
Yeah.
dissipating me from a physical perspective? Is it more emotionally based, where it's the opposite of joy? And when you start to understand the opposites, that's really what's creating the space, right? And again, that goes into the foundations of dial in, and kind of how we're doing it from the level of awareness. Is once you start to understand the opposites of those emotions, it creates the space for what helps you transcend or helps you understand. And that opens you up for the epiphanies, right? And so I would say, have the internal dialogue first. That's the very first tool out of the toolbox, but I'm sure you have a few more.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, just going back to the first thing that you said about the big projects, can I translate that to prioritizing? Like
Yes.
just being really clear on what you want. You said you lost your passion because you weren't aligned with what you were truly passionate about, because there were all these other projects that you just had to you know remove, eliminate, to create space or
That's
to
right.
expand the energy to what toward what truly matters,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
And the second thing you mentioned, which I love, which is having that conversation. You are not that part that's losing energy. It's a part of you, it's not all of you, right? So having that conversation and really understanding what is it trying to tell you, right?
Yeah.
There's a message there. What is it communicating to you? What does it want you to do? What is it bringing to your awareness, right?
Mhm.
And 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 that's such an important you know um, point, and something that it's so easy to do, right?
Mhm.
It's being aware of all the parts of us at all times, right?
That's right.
As opposed to just being that one singular voice that overrules and or relegates to the side these other parts of us that want to be heard and that need to be
Yeah.
honored, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
It's you as a totality, and you cut off any of those things that you get attached to, and that's the big one too, right? Is letting go. It's like, what aspect of yourself are you willing to let go in order to create space to get to the new elevated or transcendent self? And you'll realize that none of these things that you thought were important are are actually you. It's like you can let go of even your hair, like big things like your heritage, your ethnicity, your experience from the past. Like, in order to really understand the next level of things, you first need to dump out the contents of that cup. If your cup is full, then there's no room for growth, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. uh, I'll just add to that, the aspect of, and we've talked about this over and over, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk about it because we're big proponents of self-care, right? Regular exercise, balanced diet, right? Adequate rest, sleep, absolutely crucial, right? Because when you feel good about yourself, you feel good, right? It just I've never been in a situation where I'm doing all the self-care and I don't feel good about myself.
That's right.
It's one of those one of those truths, right? That no matter what, irrespective of the season, right? You spoke about seasons, right? Uh, we also have that, that the human journey has seasons. As
Yeah,
long as I'm checking those boxes, I feel good about myself,
that's
right?
right.
I look in the mirror and I'm happy with what I see, what's being reflected back. So I was listening to a podcast about Mr. Beast. We've talked about Mr. Beast and how he's created this, what is it, a studio? I mean, it's no longer a YouTube channel. He's really building a studio,
That's
right?
right.
It's the modern day studio. So he was asked recently about um, you know about what keeps him going, right? The guy's just got incredible energy, right? And he said something. He said two things. One, I thought, it's not really tied to the what we're talking about here, but I'll just mention it. He said, "How is it that you're so successful? What do you do?" He said, "What I do is I find someone who I can duct tape to my leg, and that person follows me for 12 months. They live with me. We have meals together. We socialize together. We play board games together. We're literally doing everything together for 12 months. And what that does at the end of 12 months is they know exactly how I think in every situation." A bit of a exaggeration, but you get the point, right? And
Nice.
he says, at
Yeah.
the end of the day, I've cloned myself, and then he's going to do that with the next person, and we're just creating more and more of people who think and work like me. I
Mini
thought that was
me's.
really interesting. Mini me is exactly
Yeah.
Mr. Beast, mini
Yeah.
Mr. Beast.
Yep.
The second thing that was really interesting, which is tied to what we're talking about going soft. And so, he was asked, like, how is it that you remain so excited? Right. And he said, there are events in life, right? Uh, Marriage, big events, graduation, all these different things, right? And having children is a big event, right? Which can profoundly shift someone's perspective, especially in entrepreneurs, right? And when you have kids, your priorities change. And he said, one thing I'm certain of is I don't want to have kids because having kids makes you soft.
Hmm.
You go soft after having kids. And he went and he continued to expand on it. He said, the late nights and the weekend work, that once felt exciting and exhilarating, now clash with the demands of driving my son or my daughter to soccer practice, or uh, everything else that comes with parenthood. And I thought that was a really interesting perspective from someone who's obviously achieved a lot of success very early in his life. But it doesn't, it rubbed me the wrong way, because I think you can have children or really live the full spectrum. This is not really about children, it's about living the full spectrum of life. And I'm not saying that everyone should have kids. What rubbed me the wrong way was the fact that he tied having children to going soft as an entrepreneur.
Hmm. Yeah. And he's, from somebody that doesn't have kids but is aware, I know that what he said is only half a thing and he doesn't know what he's missing, right? Because I can, and
Mm.
you know where I'm going with this, because I could, the mind plays tricks. And it's like, okay, you have this hardened perspective. I don't accept the premise at all, because I could think of the exact opposite, where having kids makes you go hard. It's like, oh my gosh, now I have 10 times more invested into succeeding because of
Yeah,
the fact that I have more at stake. So I could think of the exact
absolutely.
opposite reason for why it's going to make you, and it gives you kind of this new vivacity for life. I mean, fatherhood is the ultimate slay the dragon. Like, oh man, I got to do stuff for my family. I got to protect my family. So I would argue against that immediately. He's got some
Yeah,
points about time management, but the universe has its way of creating space when something as beautiful or magnificent and magical as having a child or starting a family, which is the ultimate gift in abundance. And I truly believe that. The universe has its way of taking care of you and taking care of your family and the space that you create for it, to in a way that's still going to be attuned to the passions, right? And that changes you as an individual as well. So yeah, I
yeah,
don't accept that premise. I could think of the exact opposite reason, even though yes, somebody in his position that's obviously incredibly successful can have that kind of singular perspective of, yeah, I'm burning the candle at both ends. I'm doing 18-hour days. I'm doing this big thing. I don't need kids, nor do I ever want to have kids. But he may change his tune. Ask him again in
yeah,
5 years, right?
yeah. True, true. Mr. Beast, if you're listening to the pod, we'd like you to be a guest, and we want to challenge you, because we don't accept your premise on that point. All right. If you got value from this conversation, then we have a small ask. This one is simple. It'll take you 27 seconds. We've timed it, and it will help us reach more people like you. Subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating. Nikos and I, Nikos, what do you think? Is that good karma to subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating?
It is good for the world.
It's good for the world. There you go. You heard it here. It's good for the world. Thank you in advance. Stay emergent. This is a wrap.
Thank you for tuning in to Emergence Now, where we explore the emerging trends, technologies, and ideas that are shaping our world today for you to discover yourself. We hope you enjoyed this episode and gained valuable insights that you can apply in your own life. If you want to stay up to date with our latest episodes, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. And don't forget to follow us on social media, where we share additional content, engage with our community, and keep the conversation going. Thanks again for listening to Emergence Now, and we hope you'll join us for the next episode.